So what we're going to do is we're going to be working in Premiere today. For those of you at home, I am already sharing my screen. In this in-class files section, go ahead and download this double identity file. Make sure you extract it somewhere local. For those of you here in class, you can do that as well. Or if you want, you can go to the server with those backslashes, ETSUE3, and you can get this exercise 2 double identity. Go ahead and give that a copy. It's not too big, but it is a little hefty, so it might take a bit of time, especially for those of you downloading it from D2L. Just make sure you uncompress it, you extract it to a location, that way Premiere can see it. All right. So this is Premiere. When you open it up, sometimes it does take forever and a day to load up. I know on my home computer, it sometimes can take 20 minutes before Premiere will boot. So if it does take a while on your home computers, for those of you remote, that's not uncommon. These computers here in the labs are very new, so it opens pretty quickly. I suspect in about a good 4 years, that won't be the case. So this is what happens when you open Premiere. It may or may not prompt you to log in. That's just to make sure that you have a valid license. If you're here in the labs, you just need to enter your @etsu.edu email. If you're at home, you'll have to enter your own account name. We currently haven't got the @etsu.edu working for you guys at home yet. You can also remote in. I'm pretty sure I have put something up on D2L about how to do that. If not, it will be up there today. So without further ado, this is what happens when you open up Premiere. Premiere is a very nice, easy way to edit video clips together. There are free alternatives. So if you are working from home and you're like, I really don't want to spend the money on Premiere, I did put something in the important links section of the content on D2L about some free alternatives, one of which is DaVinci Resolve. It's pretty much the only big competitor against Premiere right now. So there's a few kind of up and coming. So if you're wanting to kind of go this route, but you don't want to pay for Adobe, or maybe you just don't like Adobe, there is some other resources out there for you. And all of the stuff is pretty much the same as well. So if you're like, yeah, screw Adobe for the rest of the semester, I'm going to use that other program, you can do that. I have no problems with you doing that. So when you first open up Premiere, you get this little box here. This is all the kind of basic, same thing as Photoshop. This is your home screen. This is where all of your old projects will pop up. Currently, there is none. So I'm going to hit New Project here. And what it brings us is this. This is pretty much like a file directory for where your project is going to be set. So I'm just going to name this Premiere Lesson. You can call this whatever you like if you're following along. This is just kind of the basic run through of how this program works today. Now, it will automatically default it to Untitled. You can save it as Untitled. Just be aware that if you want to save it as Untitled sometime later, but you've put some actual effort into it, you just never renamed it, you will accidentally overwrite your stuff. So now we have our location here. If I hit Browse, this is where I want to put all of my stuff. Currently, it's defaulting to Documents, then Adobe, Premiere Pro, and 14. That's kind of a mouthful. I'm just going to put mine right now in my Documents folder. However, I do recommend you putting this on a hard drive if you're working from home, somewhere that's safe. For you is probably your Documents, but here in the lab, sometimes the documents can get wiped. It's on that Z folder that they give you. You can also go to the server for you guys and save it under that Digim Students share template here. You can make yourself a folder and save anything you want to in there. So I'm just going to change mine just for now to Documents. Then there's a couple of other things that we need to look at. This renderer here, depending on your computer, might need to be changed. If for some reason this GPU acceleration, the CUDA, the CUDA, if that for some reason is slowing your computer down, you can change it to OpenCL or the software only. I recommend if your computer is giving you problems, play around with it to see which one works best. But for right now, I'm just going to leave this one here. Display format, that's pretty standard. You want to know what the time is on your footage. The feet per frames is really only for if you're going to be using like actual film. You can also just do frames as well. Your audio, it does it based on samples. You can change it to millimeters or milliseconds. But for us, audio samples will work just right. And the only other thing we really need to change, at least on this page, is our capture. Currently, our capture format is DV. Kelly, you say yours doesn't show CUDA, then you are fine. CUDA is the new one. That might be what your computer said wasn't compatible. So currently it's DV. You want to change that to HDV because that's higher definition video. Why go for the standard when you can go better, right? Other things, especially those of you at home might need to know, is your scratch disk are located in this little folder when you click on the word scratch disk. If Premiere River starts getting really slow and sluggish, change your scratch disk. Currently, right now, mine goes to my documents. It's the same as my project. If it's ever giving you problems, put it on your D drive in your temp folder or any temp folder that you can delete easily. This is kind of like your buffer. This is kind of that loading and caching information that you don't really need to have, but it's good to have to make things run a little smoother. But if your computer can't handle it, it's easy to delete. So if you ever do need to change that, you can just browse and put that in a temporary folder. And then whenever you need to, you can just delete that whole folder. And ingest settings, we don't need to worry about that. Not in this class. So I'm just going to hit OK. This is the actual Premiere interface. So what this kind of does is right now we are in the learning tab. So just like Photoshop, it has different workspace types. Learning has all these really cool tutorials over here on the side. If there's something you want to learn, kind of scroll through there. It'll have the basics. It's got some really neat stuff kind of in here. There's also more tutorials that you can look through to find some really cool editing techniques and things like that, kind of hidden in their website when you hit that little plus sign. I definitely recommend if you want to really dive into editing and things like that, taking at least a look, going onto YouTube and looking up some really neat stuff will help you out a little bit. However, the one that we're going to mostly be using in this class is either assembly, editing, or colored. I'm a personal fan of the editing layout. It looks the exact same, but that learning bar is gone. Assembly is similar, but it's got a much larger place for you to import all of your footage, so you can see things a lot larger. And the color correction already has a color correction bar built in over on the far right. So just for right now, I'm going to do editing. You can pick any of them that you like. Just be aware that your interface might look a little different than mine if you're using one that's different. Now, we do have all the same folders types as we do with Photoshop. So we've got our file, we can make a new thing here. However, it does have a whole bunch of different things inside of here. So not only can we create a new project, we can also do team projects. They'll kind of share over the cloud, which is kind of neat. We'll be using new sequences a lot in this class. It kind of makes a different timeline, so you can have multiple tabs of timelines to make different clips and different edits that you can put all together into one. Bins work like folders. So if you have a whole bunch of clips down in your import media area right here, and you're like, I want to put all of my audio into a folder, you would put it into a bin, and then all of your audio would be in there. So you would know that you have a different file system all inside here. You can also add adjustment layers when we start doing color correct. You can put all of your color correction on that adjustment layer and not actually on your footage. Kind of works like one of the layers in Photoshop. There are different types of titles you can put for text in here. We'll talk about them a little later in the semester. But this is where the legacy title is located. It works a little bit different than just the text stuff. And then you can also import Photoshop files. You can add black video, which is just a standard black matte video. color mats, which is just the color video, and all sorts of other things. So for right now, I'm just going to create a color mat just to kind of show you how it works. And right now, my video settings are 720 by 480, which is not the file format that I'm looking for. I can come down here and change that. However, I'm going to click cancel and do file new sequence because I want to make sure that my aspect ratio of my video is the size I want it before I start. So currently, even though we changed it to HDV before we made our project, it's still popping up as the standard definition video. And so we're going to come down to HDV here, and these are all those high definition 1080p 24 frames a second video. So this is the one I'm going to select. When we start doing things here for footage, this is also the one you're going to want to be looking for to use for this class. Now there are other sizes in here. Red is a really big one. You can go all the way up to 4K, that sort of thing. So if you are interested in shooting much higher quality video, you do still have options in here. So I'm just going to do that HDV 1080p, 24 frames a second. And it automatically changes my sequence over here. This looks dark and black right here. That's because I don't have any footage. And I can view my footage over here on this right side. So I'm just going to do that again. I'm going to go File, New, and I'm going to create a color mat. And as you can see now, my height and width are definitely much higher, better quality video, that sort of thing. So I'm going to hit OK. And what it will do is let me pick a color. So I'm just going to pick like a nice blue and tell it OK. And it'll ask if I want to name it. So I'm just going to call it blue video. Call it color. You can leave it color mat. I'm just going to hit OK. And it's still not over here. Now, if you were to have footage here, which we'll look at in a minute, currently I am on the preview way of seeing footage. So if I were to have an actual video here, if I scrubbed my mouse backwards and forwards in this blue area that I have, it would actually play my footage a little bit. For those of you at home, when we do this in a few moments, I will ask that you check to see if that starts to crash your Premiere. And if it does start to crash it, change to the list view, because it does sometimes take a bit of computer processing power. So if you're already having issues with Premiere and you think it's going to start slowing your computer down, you can change to list view. On these computers, it automatically defaults to that icon preview view. Now, if I pull this over here onto my timeline, it should automatically snap to the 0000 point. This is so that you don't get any black or dark video right at the very beginning. We will have some of that in some of your projects later on. And the best way to get those couple of seconds that you will need is actually just to make sure that there is nothing in front of your footage. So if you need to have black video for a couple of seconds, just having an empty space will get you that exact look that you're looking for. So I have this little color mat. Because it is a color mat, I can change its size whenever I like. All you have to do is click on the edge here and drag it. You'll get this kind of bracket with an arrow in it. There is a fuzz inside of my mask and it itches my nose. So you can drag this to be as long or as short as you need it to be. And so now I have a couple of seconds worth of black video. Or blue video. It's blue. It's blue. Now back up to file here. This is also where you can open projects. You can save projects here. You can close projects. The really good thing to kind of remember about closing projects is when you save them and open something else, it doesn't actually get rid of the project that you're working on. It will keep it over here open. So see how I have project Premiere lesson right here? If I were to open another project under a different name, it would just be another tab. So I would need to close out that project to kind of save space over there. Now, if you're working on like 6 different projects all at once and you need to have all of them open, this works really great. But if your computer's having a bit of issues running more than one project, just close a few, and you can always reopen them. We can also import from here. So file import is something that we'll do quite often. The other way that you can import is you can actually just right click in this dark space inside of this window here and import. But you can also click and drag footage from a file folder into this area. It'll take it a few seconds. It'll have a little buffering to kind of show you what that looks like that, and then you can drop it in. So go ahead and import at least one or two of those clips from that folder of your choosing. Make sure it's not the audio, it's the actual video parts. The HDV 1080p, 24 frames a second. Uh, 1080p, 24 frames. Okay, so now that we've imported some stuff here, we can come over here to edit and take a look at some of the things that we can change about our overall composition. So here we have our cut, copy, paste, our undo, our redo. You can duplicate things. You can also label different footage with different colors. This is a really nice way to kind of keep track of what different scenes look like. So if you're like, I know all of this one scene needs to be that sand color or like a mango, so that I can know that my next scene that's coming up is that like Caribbean or lavender color down in here. So right now, see how this one is kind of that like pinkish color? I can click on that and go to label and be like, no, I really want this to be mango. This is all aesthetics, but it's also a really good way of keeping track of what your footage looks like, so that once you have like a whole bunch and you're really, really far zoomed out, you'll be able to see all of your colors. Now back under edit, there is a preferences section. Go ahead and click on the general preference settings here. So edit, preferences, general. And it should pop up this little window. Now about 90% of all of the stuff here under all of these preferences settings should be okay at default. But there's a couple of things, especially for those of you at home, that you might need to change at any given point. So appearance, this is personal preference. Do you want a darker Premiere or a lighter Premiere? Do you want your color to be a little bit darker or a little lighter? So do you want all of your buttons here to be brighter or more dull? I like mine a little bit brighter so it's easy to see. Your audio, this is actually the audio that's being inside of Premiere and what will be exported. Most of this won't need to be changed ever. However, audio hardware, should you come into a computer here in the lab and it has a different hardware type than what you may have had at home, or vice versa, or maybe the computer right next to yours has a little bit different of a setup. If you're ever working inside of Premiere and it stops playing your audio, but you know it has audio, check here. Your output might not be the correct one. So currently mine is set to this Dell. I'm pretty sure it actually needs to be my speakers. But I'm gonna leave it for now. You can also come down and disable autosave. So if you're like, autosave keeps messing up my stuff, autosave keeps crashing my Premiere here, or you're just like, I just don't like autosave, I think it's a waste of time, you can toggle that off. If you're like me and autosave can save your life, you're like, no, I want it to autosave every like 5 minutes. It's defaulted to 15. This way you're only losing about 15 minutes worth of work instead of all of it. If you go down here to graphics, Graphics isn't actually the graphics that you would have inside of Premiere. It's actually the text type. So if you do need to change your text to a different type of engine, you can change it here. Here is all of your labels. So if you're like, I want to create a custom label colored, you can come in here and be like, I want all my labels to be black, like my soul. You can change it to that. Now, the really big one, especially for those of you at home, or if you're going to be traveling from here to your house to work on things, is under Media. There's this Enable Hardware Accelerated Encoding and Decoding. It does require you to restart your Premiere. You can turn that off, and it'll actually make your Premiere run a little faster. What that's doing is it's trying to use different hardware in your computer to run faster. Same thing under playback here. This Mercury Transit is pretty much the same thing. It just does something a little different. If your Premiere is giving you that error that I think a couple of you were getting, you can turn that off here, and it should run it a little easier. Other than that, the only other ones you need to look at is this memory. Right now, the RAM reserved for the other applications is 6. So right now, Premiere is taking up 26 gigs on this computer. You can change that, especially if you're at home. If you're like, I really want to reserve like all but like 4 gigs of RAM on my home computer, you can do that. And that might also help with some performance issues, especially if you're toggling between like 20 tabs of Google and Premiere. Other than that, you can come down here to Timeline and take a look at some of these that might possibly change some visual stuff. But other than that, I'm just going to hit OK. Those are just some nice little things to know, some tricks about how to change preferences here inside of Premiere. Other things that we can look at is under Sequence, your sequence settings. This is a good place to change your editing mode. So currently mine is the HDV 1080. But if for some reason someone comes to me and they're like, hey, that thing that you're making for us, we need it to now be in 4K, you can change it to 4K. You can also change if you're going to be at 24 frames a second, 25, or 30 from here. There's still a fuzz inside my mask. And you can also change the height and width of your video. I recommend keeping it landscape mode. Portrait mode tends to have some weirdness unless you're going to be exporting for something like a TikTok or a YouTube app or something like that. So I'm going to hit OK. On here? Oh, the frame rate? So it's just a math. It's 23.976. When played back will register closer to 24 and a more natural frame rate to get a better look for you. So there's less weirdness to it. It's all math based. Yeah. Yeah, it's something weird. Kelly, your sequence settings are grayed out. You can't pull that up. Make sure your sequence here is highlighted blue, and then see if it will work. Awesome, that did it. Perfect. Okay, so next we have markers. We'll take a look at that in a different spot. There, I got it. I got the fuzz. I got it. Perfect. Awesome. Markers are a good way to see where certain things are going on inside of your Premiere. We'll take a look at that in just a second. But this is where all the buttons are that are kind of related to those markers that we'll be making. Your graphics are, like I said, they're fonts. So if you need to download a new font, you can find it here. Your view is where all of your viewable stuff is located. Do you want your playback resolution to be full, half, a quarter, eighth, or 16, that sort of thing. Windows, this is where all of the buttons are inside of your Premiere. So since we are in the editing workspace, right here, we automatically have our audio clip and meters, our effects controls and effects, our history, our info, markers, media browsers, our metadata, our source monitor, which is right here, our tools, and then our little workspace section up here. So this right here on our left side is our source video. This is what our original video will look like. So if I were to click and drag, so you can see how she's kind of moving when I scrub through here, so I can see what the clip is doing. So I'm going to click and drag her over here. You can see she automatically came in with some audio. I'm going to move my blue video over, put her at the front. If I were to double click on her, she pops up over here in my source. So if I had her color corrected to black and white, or maybe I have it super vibrant for some reason, we would see the original here, but our edited version here. Now, I'm going to go over here. So right here, I have my source. It has the name .mov. I'm going to click on this effects controls that's right next to it. And I'm going to make sure I have my footage right here selected. If your footage is really small, this big bar here with the circles is your zoom in and zoom out. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit, too far, so that I can see that clip itself a little bit better. So right now, when I look here, I have motion, opacity, time remapping, volume, channel volume, and panner. So for right now, we're not going to really worry about the audio of the exercise that you guys will be getting today. So you can actually ignore all of that volume if you like, the audio side. We're mostly going to be looking at the motion, your opacity, and the light. So when I open up motion here, you'll see that I have position. This actually allows you, when you click and drag on these blue numbers here, to manually position where this footage is going. But seeing as how I changed my sequence settings to be 1080, my footage is just a little bit smaller. So it's got that big black background around it. I'm actually going to take my scale and click and drag it up so that she's full screen again. Now you also, once you have this selected, you'll get these little bars right here. You can also click and drag those, and they will scale in tandem. If you hold down, I think it's Shift or Control, you can get some other weird stuff going on in there. I'm just going to scale her up a bit. It should be right next to your score. Other things that we can do from this motion section is we can rotate our footage. We can also change the anchor point. The anchor point is this little crosshair here in the center with a circle around it. That is the base point of your footage. This is where it moves from. So if you move that anchor point, so if I move it over here, if I change the scale, it'll scale from that point, not from the center anymore. So that anchor point is really important on how things move or scale inside of here. So just moving that will change the focus location of our footage. So if I know I want to put it up here in this corner, because I want to scale this over here to put other clips beside her, I just move my anchor point before scaling. With precise numbers. Yes. So you can click and drag it, but there's also these numbers right here. So if I'm like, I know I want to put my anchor point at 300 by 360, it'll automatically move to that spot. Yeah. Opening up our opacity here. We'll really talk about this a lot more later in a couple of weeks when we work on the next section that we use with Premiere. But there is an opacity in here. You can make it fade in, fade out. You can also use objects in here to silhouette certain spots and that sort of thing. This is called masking. We'll have an entire day just on masks. So don't feel pressured to really dig into that yet. I just want to make sure that you know that it is there at this point. Does anyone have any questions right now about just the overall interface, since we haven't even gotten to most of the buttons yet? Any questions about Premiere? Okay, so what we're going to do is actually look at your editing buttons that you have inside of here. So right now, we've only really looked at the top part of our Premiere. There's also After Effects controls when you're in the editing, your audio mixer. So if you need to make your audio lower or louder, you can add it there. And your metadata is here as well. This is stuff like captions. This is all the information of like where you shot the footage if you need it. How big is it? What's the frame rate? That sort of thing. That can all be found here in your metadata. But let's take a look at this bottom half here. We'll come back to these buttons in a moment. Your project Premiere lesson here that I have, that is where you import all of your footage. This is where all of it goes. Like I said, you can change that to list view. So now I have my sequence 1, my blue video, and then my 2 clips. If I wanted to, I could create a new bin, call it footage, and I can just click and drag my footage into that bin. So now if I really just needed to see that I had footage in here, it would be inside that bin. You don't have to do that with me right now if you don't want to. Next, we have our media browser. This is to make sure that you can actually find certain things inside of your Premiere. So let's say I know I have some footage here under my faculty section. I can scroll down through here, go into my actual folder and look for certain things. Your libraries are saved things that you've gotten from the web. You've gotten it from the Adobe store, that sort of thing. You can put stuff in here. I don't use it too terribly much. However, you can see I already have colors there. So that is something that I have made. That is this blue video right there. Info is just like metadata, but it's a little bit more condensed. Depending on what clip you have selected will change how or what you're reading here. So this is a movie type, which means it's an MOV. The video itself is 23.976 or 24 frames a second. It's not 1080p, but it is 720. And it has this type of audio. It's also only 3 seconds long or something like that. So you can read all of that here. We then have our effects tab. This is where all the cool stuff inside of Premiere is. This is where all of your presets, all of your effects, transitions, that sort of thing. That's all located right through here. If you'd like, you can take a look through those in a few moments when we start our exercise. I recommend playing with some of them. They're really fun. And then we have our markers. So I mentioned that we would have markers in here. What markers do, as I said, is that they kind of mark locations in your footage. So if I come right here over on my timeline and I'm like, I want to make sure that she puts her glove on right here. This is the exact time on this timeline that I want to make sure her glove is on. I can click this little button right here, or M on the keyboard for marker, and you'll see it automatically pops up that I have a marker on this footage right here. And if I right click on our marker here on the timeline, I can edit that marker. So we noticed over here, before I clicked on the marker itself, the marker had like a green kind of border. If you're like, I don't really think that color works for the clip, or if you're just like, I don't like that color, you can change it. So I'm going to change it to orange. You can give that a name. So I'm going to call it glove on. And then you can write a comment about it. You could be like, I want her to be gloved now. This way you kind of know what's going on. And if you hand your footage off to somebody else, they also know why you have that marker. This is also a really good thing to have. If you want to have, there we go. If you want to have something to kind of keep your brain on track. So if you're working here and then another class is coming in and they kick you out, you can put a marker down real quick and be like, I was editing this clip to make this clip match. Just really fast, and then it'll stay there. You'll have a marker that says, hey, right here is where I want that to be. Or maybe you have another marker way down here that says, I want to have her with a gun or something like further down, a couple clips away. Markers are just neat. Then we have our history. If we're like, ooh, I made a mistake, but I don't exactly remember where I made it, you can come to your history and just click one above where that is. So let's say I want to get rid of this marker. I changed my mind. I don't want it anymore. I can actually come over here to move project item, and my marker will disappear. And it won't keep that change till I make another move. So I can go back to adding that marker or having it not be there. Now, the second I do something else, it will overwrite that undo. So I can no longer re-add that marker. I have overwritten it. So I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to click these little double arrows and go back to my project, Premiere lesson. I'm going to zoom out just a bit so you guys can see some more stuff. So if this is our add marker, these next ones are mark in and mark out. What mark in and mark out does is it says, hey, from this moment to this moment is really all I want to see inside of my Premiere when I hit play. So if I add one here, if I only want to see like this clip and a little bit of black, I can add another one. And when I hit play here, it'll only play those parts. Or it'll only export those parts depending on what you have going on. So I'm going to go back to my history. I'm going to remove those. I would hope I don't need to tell you what the play button looks like. I think all of you have watched at least one YouTube video or one type of DVD, things like that. So we have our play, our forward, our backwards, our go all the way back to the beginning. And then we do have our go all the way to the end. These other buttons are ones we won't really work too terribly much with in this class. But your lift and your extract will take parts of your clip and other parts of your clip, and they'll kind of shift them around as you need them to. They'll kind of lift them out of your composition for a bit and then put them back. Okay. Any questions about any of those buttons or anything like that? Perfect. So.
What was immediately after you said history? What was immediately after you said during history?
Oh, mark in, mark out, all the play buttons. Yeah, you're good. So over here, since we're in the editing tab, we have these little buttons right here. This is our toolbox for everything that we can do inside of Premiere editing wise. Now we do have our effects. Those are nice, but these other tools are your main ones that you're going to be using inside for your editing. So I'm going to click on my blue video because this is what I'm going to be cutting down and trimming and doing all that fun stuff. So your default tool is this little arrow right here. That's the selection tool, or V on the keyboard, just kind of like it is inside of Photoshop. This will allow you to click on footage, drag it around, move it, all that sort of stuff. You can also click on audio and lower it to different audio tracks. You can do the same thing with video. You can move it to different video tracks, which are these right here. So you've got video 1, 2, and 3. audio 1, 2, and 3. If I know I need to lock one, so if I'm like, I don't want this blue video to move at all, I can lock it. Nothing I do will let me edit it. If I just don't want to view it, I can click that little eyeball and it'll turn off. So when I hit play or drag on my keyboard, nothing's there. Same thing happens with audio here. You can mute with this little M right there. So if you're like, I don't want to hear any audio on this entire train, it knows I'm teaching. So you can mute your audio right here. So if you're like on this entire track, I don't want to hear any audio, you can click that and you won't have to worry about any audio in your export. You also won't have to hear the same clip repeated over and 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 over again. But you can also record a voiceover from here. So let's say you're doing something and you're like, I really need to record some audio. Maybe you're playing a game or something and you're going to export it from Premiere to YouTube or something like that. And you're like, I want to do a voiceover of something that happened right here. All you have to do, I'm not going to do it because last time I did it, it sounded like a demon was escaping the computer. You click on it and it'll give you a countdown of 3, 2, 1, and then you just talk and then it will play it back and it'll record it. I got a lot of reverb last time I tried, so we're not going to do that because I've got a nice mic here and a really loud speaker there. The next button over here on this side, come on, oh, all right, is your track select and track backwards. Your track select forward will select all of your footage from where you've clicked forward on your timeline. So if I click here on this blue video, I can move my blue video, but if I click on my video here, it'll also move my blue video. So it'll move everything from there forward on your timeline. The opposite is what is the back forward tool or the backwards tool. So if I click this one, it'll move and everything backwards on the timeline will move. So if I click on blue video now, they'll both move. You've got your ripple edit tool. This is a really fun tool. It'll show you exactly where on your timeline things are editing. So for instance, if I move here and I want to ripple edit my blue video a little bit further into my clip here, I can click on the edge here and it'll show you the exact spot on the timeline that it would be cutting to. So now I'm a couple seconds shorter and my blue video kicks in faster. There's also other rolling edit tools, rate stretch tools. These are just other tools that do slightly similar things inside of here. We're going to skip this tool. The slip tool works similar. It allows you to slip footage back and forth so you can see exactly what's going to be happening at any given point. We have our pin tool right here. This will allow you to create shapes inside of your composition. So let's say you need to build a wonky shape to cover something, or you can also use it to draw masks. Again, like I said, don't worry about masks. We'll get to them later. You also have your hand tool. This will allow you to pan on your timeline, as well as sometimes up here if you have multiple clips and you're zoomed in really far. And then we have our text tools. So you can add a type or vertical type as needed. Your pen tool also has shapes inside them as well. And your hand also has the zoom tool. So if you're like, I need to zoom, you can zoom as needed. Now the tool I skipped is the razor tool. It used to be called the cut tool. Me and the razor tool have a vendetta. So you'll hear me call it the cut tool. It is C on the keyboard. Why would it be C if it's called the razor tool? It's the cut tool. What the cut tool does is it will cut your footage into different sections. So let's say I wanted just a little bit of this blue video right before my clip. So I can use this and just cut it. Just click on the footage once and it will cut. The more you click on your footage, the more it will cut. So do be careful. If you're trying to move something and you still have the cut tool selected, you might have to Control Z a little bit to undo a few of those. But now I could hit my V key. I could lift up that little bit of blue video and set it right between So I'd have blue, my clip, and then blue. This is a really good way of removing certain parts of your clip that you don't want. So let's say you've got another piece of footage here, and you drag it on here, and it's like really long, but you also don't want like half of this. Mute yourself. But you also don't want like any of this part in your clip. You can cut it, and then all you have to do is select that piece and hit delete, and it'll just remove that clip from your timeline. It won't remove the overall footage. So if I'm like, oh, I really didn't want to cut all of that, I can come in here, grab the edge here. Remember, it's got that little bracket with the arrow. If I click that and drag it back, it'll add more of that footage that I cut back to your footage. So should you accidentally cut the wrong spot, you can fix that mistake. All you have to do is use the standard selection tool to drag that bit of footage back into your clip. Does anyone have any questions so far?
Probably a little out there, but just add the title.
Okay.
You don't have to jump to that yet, or just add it on the screen.
Yeah, we're just doing some basic stuff.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, you're good. So what we're going to do here is for the rest of the class, you guys have time. You've got about, I think, 35 minutes, 40 minutes to work on exercise 2. And what exercise 2 is you're just going to take all of the clips and audio and things that I gave you and put it into a story inside of Premiere. You're going to edit it. You might have to flip some stuff. To do that, all you have to do is go to your effects, and you can actually type in flip. And you can actually just take your flip, put it on your clip, and it'll invert it. You can also do vertical flips. And I just want you to kind of play around with the program, put stuff in order. You can make a story. It can be nonsensical. It can have audio. It doesn't have to have audio. So if you're like, I really don't want to hear whatever this guy is saying, you're like, I just don't care. You can mute him. That's okay. I won't be grading your audio quality or your video quality. I'm going to be looking at how you've edited stuff together. And you don't have to use all of them either. You can just use a handful. I do want to see at least 4 clips put together. You can use matte video. You can use the black video. Just kind of play around with the program and get used to where the buttons are, get used to the shortcut keys, that sort of thing. Any last questions before I tell you the next part? Okay, once you've got all your clips edited, you're going to have to export. There are a few things that you can do to make sure your export goes as smoothly as possible. First thing, as someone found out earlier, you can't do certain buttons if this section on your timeline isn't highlighted blue. If you accidentally click over here, this is highlighted blue. If you click up here, this is highlighted blue. When you go to export, make sure it is your timeline that has that blue bar around it. Otherwise, it'll tell you it's exporting, but nothing will happen. So to export, make sure this is selected. You just want to go File, Export. There's all these different buttons in here. For this class, you just want to do Media or Control M, and it'll bring up this little window right here. If you remember nothing else from today, please remember this. Your format, if you turn in an AVI to me, I will not grade it. You want H.264. This is the MP4 format. If for some reason MP4 H.264 does not work, a QuickTime will suffice. So if for some reason you don't have that option or something doesn't work right or it comes up weird, that .mov QuickTime will work. I will accept that. But I'm looking for this H.264. if you need a way to remember it, it's the Blu-ray one, but without the word Blu-ray on it. Because it has H.264 and H.264 Blu-ray. You can remember it by it's the one with the Blu-ray, but without the word Blu-ray. So you just want to click on that. It'll change your sequence. So now you see it's .mp4. You have a high bitrate. How did I open the export settings? Go File, Export, Media. So it's File, Export, Media. Now, since I have changed it to H.264, it will save that. So every time you open up your Premiere, once you've done it once, it tries to remember your settings. So if you are working from home, those of you remoting in, once you've done it once, you shouldn't have to change it again. I recommend just double checking that it's the correct one every once in a while. Because like I said, I won't accept AVIs. They're massive. Now, this output name is sequence 01. That's not really helpful. It doesn't really tell me how big my footage is or what it is. So if you click on that, it'll open up an export window here. So I can just change that to Premiere Lesson 1. Hit save. So now my output name of the video when I hit export will be Premiere Lesson 1. Now, things to be aware of. If you are like, I just don't want any audio, I want all video, you can turn off export audio. There will no longer be any audio. And if for some reason you don't want to export your video and only want your audio, that is an option. You can just toggle that off. Don't know why you would do this, but if for some reason you have a way that you just want audio, you can do that. And then the other thing that we want to make sure that you're checking is this use max render quality. It will upgrade, or it will take a little bit longer to export, but the overall quality of your video will look better. If you just need to get it out really, really quick, quality doesn't matter to you, you can uncheck that, but it really doesn't take too much longer. It's maybe like a couple of seconds compared to like a couple seconds. Now, before you click anything, there is a Q button here. The one for this class right now we want is export. However, what Q does is it opens up the encoder media queue. So let's say you have 10 sequences that you want to export so that you can take them into a different program, or maybe you need to turn in 10 different things to 10 different people. You can queue all of them up. And then all you'll have to do once it's queued is hit the play button and it'll export all of them all at once. It's really nifty. When we start working in After Effects, I think next week or later this week, you'll be using the Q button quite a lot. It is a really nice piece of software that kind of works together with After Effects and with Premiere. But for right now, I'm just going to hit export. And it will export my video quite quickly. So it has a little countdown timer there. It says it's going to take about 5 seconds. And it's done. I can now go in to here, go to my documents, and I now have my MP4. That is what you'll be turning in to me next class. Any questions at all about exporting?
So wait, it saves as an MP4.
Mm-hmm. So H.264 is just MP4. It's just the more complicated name.
Okay.
Yeah. The only way that I really, I know there's like some really complicated way to kind of remember it. Best way I can remember is H for high quality and it ends in a 4. Or it's Blu-ray without the Blu-ray. But yeah, so it'll export as an MP4. That's the file format that we're using for this semester in here. Pretty much if you're going to go the visual effects track, everything that you do pretty much from here on out will do with this H.264. Any other questions about Premiere or the homework? There's no write-up for this one. It's just put a whole bunch of all these things into Premiere, kind of put it around, play around with all the buttons. You can add transitions if you want. You can add some color correction if you want to play around with some of the buttons in here. I just want you getting used to the software right now. And then just export it and turn it in with your name on it.
So is that going to be due on Monday?
Yes, this will be due next class.
Tomorrow?
Monday. Fridays are always work days. I don't consider them class days. Yeah, they're lab days. Also, just to make sure, especially you guys that are remote, know to kind of help reduce presence on campus a bit. On Fridays specifically, I'll be working from home. If you do have a question, or if you need to, me to look over anything, or if you're interested about the extra credit opportunities that'll happen starting next month, you can always pop in and I'll be around. I'll answer questions if you need me to look at something, personal projects or anything like that. Just pop into the Zoom and I'll be there. Any last questions at all? Okay. So that's all I have. Like I said, you've got some time to get the homework done, so you don't have to do anything outside of class. For those of you remoting in, I am going to be closing the Zoom. I will immediately reopen, so if you have questions, you can pop right back in, and I'll answer them. I'm going to try to get this all processed so that I can get it onto the website for you guys. All right. Bye, remote people. See you in a bit.